Spike, the lead singer, he's been like a top 3 rock star for me, like since I was in high school. Like I love it. There's another one where it's is his vocals. A lot of people don't like it, or you love it.
Hey, Paul here from Paul Lydell's Scream Therapy, and you are watching the Crash Course Metal Show with Trevor Crash Knight.
What is going on, guys? Trevor Crash Knight here, along with our buddy that we haven't seen for a little while from the Rock and Metal Invasion. What is going on, Steve?
Hey Trevor, oh no, great to be back on your channel, and yeah, we're looking forward to having a chat today with you about our show that we're going to do.
Yeah, good deal. So this is going to be I guess you would say a part 2 in a series that I did with Steve here. And for the first show, I went over to Rock and Metal Invasion and had a chat. We had 4 bands each that we discussed on this topic here. So the topic is going to be, each of us are going to have 2 bands each that are as good or better than they were from, I guess you would say, maybe their prime, or from like the 80s, or from the first couple albums. And then we also have 2 choices each of bands that got worse, or just that aren't as good as their earlier stuff, if you will. So, Steve, since you're the guest, more than welcome. Do the honors. Hit us with your first one of who is better.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my first one, they're either better or as good as when they first started out. And I'm going to start with a band called Wasp. Now, I didn't actually get out everything because I've got everything, but there's a lot, right? So, you know, they put out a lot of albums over the years. They're one of my favorite bands. And I guess the reason that they're one of my favorite bands is because their consistency. They've got a lot of albums, and their albums are, for the most part, good to great. There's probably one album, Eldorado, that I'm a little bit like, it's a little average for me, but the rest are very good to great. And you know, when you talk about Wasp, I guess you're talking about Blakey Lawless. He's the main sort of guy. But you know, through the '80s as well, you can't discount the influence of Chris Holmes, fantastic guitar tone, and you know, they had the songs, they had their image, they were entertaining. They definitely weren't politically correct. You know, they got in trouble a little bit, you know, from time to time, and they even managed to get through the '90s, still putting out albums throughout the '90s. Although it was interesting that you know, it did appear as though Wasp had ended because they released an album called First Blood, Last Cuts. So it was like a compilation album, and it seemed like that was it. That was the end for Wasp. And my understanding was that Blackie was going to then go off and sort of do more solo albums rather than use the Wasp name. And you know, you could say the Crimson Idol, which was the first album that Blackie did without Chris Holmes, was kind of like a solo album. I think initially it was going to be a solo album, and the record company said, no, look, put Wasp on it, please. And that didn't fare so good, like commercially. It wasn't commercially successful particularly, but critically very successful. At least I think these days, a lot of people will say that it's their favorite Wasp album. Well, not a lot, but some will. It is definitely different, but again, for me, it's different. I like The Last Command. I like the debut. I like that. It's quite different to the sound that Wasp had in the '90s, but I still like that as well.
Yeah, are you a fan?
But anyway,
are you a fan of
yeah.
KFD?
KFD, I was just about to go there. So
Okay,
yeah, KFD I like as well, even though they start bringing in industrial sort of elements to it.
hmm
Chris Himes comes back actually, interestingly enough, for that one. Um, but yeah, I like that one. And Still Not Black Enough, I think, is great. I think
yeah,
that wasn't an easy time for Wasp. I don't think they had American distribution for that album.
right,
Straight away. So it got released in Europe and the UK first, and then eventually it did get released in the States. But that just goes to show that they it was difficult for bands like that. And I think the idea with KFD was hopefully going to this shock rock type stuff with some industrial things was going to make them a little bit more relevant to what was happening musically at the time. You got to say, Blackie's got a very distinctive voice. He's obviously a good songwriter. He does the majority of the songwriting. So,
mhm,
yeah. And, just carried on into the 2000s. Lots of great albums, I think. Yeah, Chris Himes ends up leaving, but for whatever reason. There's an interesting documentary actually, Mean Man, just about Chris Himes, which is worth checking out. He sort of talks about it a bit there.
mhm,
But anyway, either way, Wasp carries on, fairly productive throughout the early 2000s. It slowed down a little bit. The last few albums I did actually pull these out. So the last few, I think, Dominator, Babylon, and Golgotha. And they're really consistently good albums. You know, uh, they actually all sound quite similar, but they sound great. And
right,
yeah, it's there's elements of their 80s sound there, but still with some more modern influences and just the evolution over time. I mean, Blackie's changed his ways quite a bit from the 80s. He's a Christian, and supposedly this is what he talks about. And I guess that's obviously going to influence his lyrics a little bit as well. And he's quite political. He's quite a chatty guy. Once you get in interviews, he gives some really thoughtful answers.
mhm,
And he's an interesting person. But anyway, it's all about the music for me, and the music's great. So yeah,
yeah.
Wasp is my first choice.
Yeah, that's not a bad choice at all. I enjoy a lot of the Wasp catalog, even the new stuff, like you said, and I think that's a really good choice because, like you said, you don't care for Hell Dorado too much, but I
Mm,
love Hell Dorado. That's
right,
of the
right.
modern stuff, man. Like that's awesome. But I do get why he does like Blackie doesn't, or most Wasp fans don't really care because it might have felt forced a little bit during that time, but like what the hell? Like 1999, I think it came out, or
Something like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
but like that's a great album for 1999, just for the topic and like the vibe of the album
sure.
and everything. But no, like you
It
said, he did.
definitely,
Yeah,
it definitely was. It was definitely an attempt. We're going to go back to that 80s sound. It's very, very much like that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But like you said, as time went on from that album, then once you get into 2000s and up until recently, he has gotten, I guess you would say, darker. Darker
Mm, mm,
themed a little bit, darker, heavier, even heavier than what you would normally think of
mm,
as far as Wasp 80s and stuff like that. But no,
mm,
I do enjoy. If I would have more Wasp of the new modern stuff, if it wasn't so hard to get. It seems really
mm,
hard to get the last like 5, 6 releases, and I know it was a hell of a time to find Hellerado around here in America,
mm,
but,
mm,
I do have
mm,
that though, I do have it, but
mm,
yeah, but yeah, and that's the thing, like, when you're talking about the music side of it, I'm with you, I like it, but then, like, as you seen on a previous, video of mine,
I know.
we had
Yeah.
a band that went on tour with Wasp over in Europe, and they told us all of their story and all what happened between them and Blackie. I'll put the link to it right here, and
Mm,
it's
mm.
it's certainly worth checking out. Pretty interesting story, but just on the music side of things, I'm with you, man. Steve, that's really good. A good pick. Good pick. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and I'm pleased you mentioned that interview, and it didn't surprise me, but then also it was interesting, very interesting to hear about that. I think, yeah, Blakely Lawless as a person, is an interesting individual, I think, and I don't know him. Just I don't
Yeah.
know. I can't make any judgments, but yeah, you just have to make your own
Yeah.
judgment for
That
yourself.
that's the boat I'm kind of into. It's like, wait, do I now you kind of see maybe Chris Holmes' side a little bit more clear
Yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
but yeah, good choice nonetheless though, Steve. Okay, so my first choice here for a band that's gotten better or just at least stayed the same as far as musical output, but I think well, I don't know. They certainly stayed the same, but I think they're a great band from their first album all the way up until hopefully their brand new album that's actually coming out in August, and that is going to be the Choir Boys or the London
Mm,
Choir Boys.
I wanna say it loud. You wanna hear it louder. I never felt the sunshine.
Whichever one that you want to call them. Either way is great in my book. They both sound great on no matter what album that they're
mm,
called, Choir Boys or London Choir Boys.
mm,
But most people know the Choir Boys from 1990 with a little bit of What You Fancy, their debut album. And then they did have a second album that came out in 91, or sorry, 93. And just like we talk about a little, it's just way too late at that point and didn't sell really well. So they kind of took a little hiatus. 2001, they put out here This Is Rock and Roll. Very good album. Still the same roots. Maybe even add a little bit even more piano to some of the rockin' songs, rockin' piano.
mm,
And it's
mm.
still the same sound all the way through. And then you do have Home Wreckers and Heartbreakers in 2008, Halfpenny Dancer, Beautiful Curse, Black Eyed Suns in 2014, 2015. Like every year they're starting to put out some stuff. And like in 2016, you got Twisted Love here. And then you got 2024 you have the new album. I think it's The Band Rolls On. I'm not sure which one or Wardour Street. I'm not sure what the issue or what it's actually going to be called.
Yeah,
But nonetheless, Spike, the lead singer, he's been like a top 3 rock star for me like since I was in high school. Like I love it. There's another one where it's is his vocals. A lot of people don't like it or you love it. And especially if you're like a Rod Stewart type of fan, I think you'll really enjoy
yeah,
the Choir Boys. And like I'm not the biggest Rod Stewart guy. I actually liked the Choir Boys before I liked Rod Stewart, but Rod Stewart was a artist that was a part of my upbringing as far as family goes. So there was an easy way to be like, oh, the Choir Boys are so much better than Rod Stewart because
mm,
they're harder rock, and they're the
mm,
80s and stuff.
mm.
But I think their stuff, their modern stuff, holds up just as well as their debut, the second album, Bittersweet and Twisted. I don't know, Steve. I know it's not necessarily. I don't know where you would put them. I guess in the Dogs the More style,
Yeah,
because they're not hair metal. They're just dirty rock, hard rock and roll.
mm,
I guess that's the best way to put it. But they still have their ballads, guitar solos. Like they have that sound and somewhat of a look, but just more of an English feel to it. If you like that English rock and roll too, that's a big, obviously influence because they're from England. So because if
mm.
you're looking for like the American style hair metal, that's not really it, but it's really good stuff though, nonetheless. More out of the new albums though, I would say Homewreckers and Heartbreakers from 2008 is a must-have if you're a fan of the Choir Boys, and even the reunion, I guess, of sorts. This Is Rock and Roll is really good as well. But no, Choir Boys are like a top 5 band for me. In all categories, like just lifetime, and I certainly deserve to be in this conversation for me anyway. I can't think of a band more better deserving in my collection anyway.
Yeah, great. It's interesting because to be honest with you, because there's so many bands that we're into and we keep track of and we'll try and keep track of, and that's one band I kind of lost track of. So I really wasn't even familiar with the fact that, I mean, I'm not surprised, but I just haven't really been following them. So the fact that they've got a new album coming out this year and they've had other albums past few years, yeah, I wasn't really up on it. I do have yeah, a bit of What You Fancy, and
That's
I do
awesome.
quite like it. Yeah, and I do quite like it. It's just the fact that I haven't checked out any of their other albums is not because of not liking this album. Just haven't got around to it. I will say that yeah, it's that sort of it's more of a dirty rock and roll kind of sound, Rolling Stones kind of thing. It's
Mhm.
if it gets put in the hair metal category, I guess it's because of the time and there's some association maybe with Guns N' Roses or something like that, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's it's definitely not metal.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
yeah,
definitely is
I
rock.
agree. Yeah, it's not metal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the way you compared it to Dogs D'Amour is perfect. That's another band that I checked out at the time, but didn't follow through
Mhm.
much more after that. But yeah, the English as well, and yeah. So I tell you the song I really like, "I Don't Love You Anymore," which is a ballad, but I love the fact that the lyrics are so anti ballad. Like
Yeah.
uh, it's like I don't love you anymore.
Yeah, and that actually got them a little bit of publicity recently with being in a HBO show, The Peacemaker, over here in the
Oh yeah,
States. And
yeah,
like Pretty Boy Floyd, like the director of the
yeah,
TV show, is a big hair metal guy. So that's actually really
right.
cool because there a whole new wave of people are coming and finding out these old bands, and also you put the second wave of hair metal from like the last 20 years in bands there, like Vangagena and stuff like that, Reckless Love
Mm,
as well.
mm.
But so that's like really cool. But yeah, it's a really good ballad though. I Don't Love You Anymore, but I would have to say my favorite track off the debut album though is Take Me Home, maybe the final track. That's like a great closer song, just a
Okay.
fun,
Yeah,
really good song. But
yeah.
yeah, that's enough talking about the Choir Boys, even though I could talk about them all day. But Steve, tell us your second better or just as good band.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to go with a band who, we talk about the '90s being hard on some of these hair metal bands, hard rock bands, and that came out in the '80s. I don't think this band, no one had it harder than this band. I'm talking about Winger.
Cause it all comes back around. And when you're broken on the ground, son, your world's come crashing down.
Yeah, Winger had a lot of success, obviously, with their debut album. This one here
Yep,
had a hit with
self-title.
the song 17, got a lot of MTV play, and then had another successful record with In the Heart of the Young and Miles Away. I think did pretty well. Can't Get Enough. They were two of the biggest singles. So lots of success. And album number 3 didn't come out until '93, so it's a bit of a challenge for them. But I think for a lot of people, they'll say this one's their best album. It's probably
Mhm.
my favorite album, Paul. Really good, but unfortunately in 1993, and also the fact that you've got Lars from Metallica throwing darts at Kip Winger and all sorts of Beavis and Butthead making fun of them.
Yep.
It was probably going to be a hard sell, like it's like Winger. If there's any band that sort of people aren't going to be promoting or into in 1993, unfortunately, Winger would be one of them. So um, again, they kind of one of those deals where they kind of had to go away for a little bit, but they Kip put out a solo album, and
Mhm.
we talked about uh, on a previous on the show you did with me, Trevor, where Reb uh, ends up joining Dokken, and
Yep.
so they're kind of going off and doing their own things for a little bit, but then they get back together, and they've been putting out a few albums in the 2000s, and I think they've been really solid albums, really good, in fact, at times. But the best one I think that they've put out since Pool is their latest one, Seven.
Yep.
Really strong album, really fantastic. They released a few singles before the album came out, and I was like, wow, this is really good. This is really hopeful that this is going to be a good album.
A little
So
different too. A
a
little,
little bit different,
yeah.
absolutely. But really showcases their musicianship too. These guys. That's what's so ridiculous that these guys were getting hassled so much because sure, there's some hair metal bands who perhaps weren't the greatest musicians, but Winger were not one of them. They are all really fantastic musicians. So Yeah, Proud Desperado was the first single, co-write with Desmond Child. And then the second song, It All Comes Back Around, that was released. That's more mid-tempo song, but really good. A bit of an epic song, that one. I think it's
Right.
fantastic. I think I've gone and done a track by track on my channel about this album. So yeah, if you want to know more, check that out. But it's a really good album. I was very sad, Trevor, because Winger announced that they were going to tour in New Zealand, and
Okay.
we don't get bands come down here very much. It's very exciting, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, the promoter, I'm not sure what it was. It ended up being cancelled. But
Ah,
so I haven't been able to see them. But that one band that seems to still be touring quite well. You know, I see
yeah,
on Instagram Wingers taking photos of him and the band in various countries around the world. So they're touring, and they seem to get some good crowds. So I think those bad days of the '90s are well and truly over for them, and they're getting a lot more respect and probably gaining more fans as you know over
that's good.
time.
That's good because and that's good that they're on your like radar as far as like New Zealand coming to New Zealand. So like I mean
Yeah,
they'll
yeah.
get there eventually then. So
Well, yeah, just the fact that they I know they've done tours through Europe and the UK and Japan, and so they're actually not just touring in their local sort of area or just doing the States. You know, they're
right.
doing all over, which
That's
I think
good.
it's great effort, especially for
Good.
an older band. You know.
Yeah, exactly. And I that's a great choice because like Winger, like I'll die on the hill of Winger was a great band in the '80s and now and like all the way through. Like when people talk shit on them for just they don't know what they're talking about when they
Mm-hmm.
talk shit on them. They just look
Mm-hmm.
at just like the quick clips or just quick jokes and just go off of that. And man, yeah, Winger is a great choice. I like Winger, and the new album, like you said, Seven, really good. Now it is different. Like there's even like progressive spots in there and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And like, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because you don't expect like In the Heart of the Young when you listen to Seven.
Mm,
But it's a, but like we said in
mm,
your show, it's if it's a natural progression,
yeah. Mm,
throughout the catalog, I'm more than happy with that. Like that's all right. I don't want In the Heart of the Young 15 times in a row. It's I don't think no fan truly wants that. But yeah,
yeah.
great choice though, nonetheless. Wenger, I
and
like it.
and and all original members too. So
Yeah,
there's the same, yeah. So there's like it is the original band, so which is
yeah,
pretty
that's
rare when you think
very
about
important. Yeah,
how
very
long
important there.
ago it's been.
So, all right, so my last pick or second, yes, last pick for a band that's gotten better or at least stayed the same. So for me, I would say probably even got better as well, and that is going to be Striper.
Change your reflection and start a new crusade. Sorry, it doesn't always make it sorry. No, maybe next time be more.
Now, everyone knows Striper as the Christian metal band or the Christian hair metal band, and they kind of get labeled as that. And I mean, obviously, rightfully so, because they are a Christian band. But a lot of people can't look past that, and a lot of people in the '80s did, and they liked, To Hell with the Devil, In God We Trust, even the albums before that as well. And and then once they had their hiatus, they after what Against the Law, which I actually really enjoy that album as well. But they had the little hiatus there. Michael went on to do his own solo stuff, which is really good too. And but then they came back in like 2001 or something like around there with Reborn, which is a little bit on at the time like a not new metal, but it was like a really modern feel to it of like what 2001 like really sounds like. And I think they did that really well. Now, is it forced? Maybe, but I think they of all the albums that were forced from bands from the '80s to try to sound grunge or whatever subgenre they were trying to be forced to sound like, I think Striper did that with Flying Colors with Reborn. But then all throughout the 2000s after that, they put out plenty of albums, like and there are more than, like, what, 7 albums that they released since then, and they're all really good. You have different stuff. It's not hair metal sound. They have like the modern sound. They have like even like
Mm,
on Take It to the Cross on one of their albums. It opens up the album of like a death metal type style, like speed metal and stuff. Like they really play around with their sound now, but it's in traces and in spots. It's not like really forcing anything either. Ballads are still good. It Michael, the whole band sounds really good still, and it's a testament that because even when I was young, I was like, Straper sounds way better than everyone else from the 80s at that point, like that I found out about. And I'm like, why isn't no one really talking about this as far as like Straper sounding better than they did back in the 80s? And they're 20 years older. And it's that's crazy to me. And they're still
mm,
doing it now, because like they're actually gonna be playing a show near me here in like a couple weeks, and I'm really thinking about doing it because but it's an acoustic show, so which is still cool. Don't get me wrong, I'll still go see it, but it's just I would have hoped for an electric show, but I can't beat it. It's like 10 minutes away, so I'm not gonna complain. But yeah, as Straper, man, I
mm,
love Straper. Of the new albums, though, I would say either check out Reborn. I would say is a really kind of an acquired taste. So I wouldn't say check that out first, but it is really good. But also, Goddamn Evil. That this is the one with like Take It to the Cross, like I was talking about. Sorry, really good ballad on here as well. Like I, that's a Striper's a home run for me as far as like this conversation here. I did say Choir Boys, but I love the Choir Boys as like a personal favorite more. But as like an actual give someone an answer to this question, it would be Striper.
mm,
Yeah. So,
mm.
do you have anything to
Yeah.
mention on Striper?
No, no. Well, I mean, when I talked about this idea with you, that was the Striper was the band you came back to me back pretty quickly. So you're absolutely right. Eh? That's your answer. Yeah. And I thought that was a great answer because I'm not that familiar with the recent Striper.
Mhm.
Um, but from what I've heard, I was like, whoa, that is quite heavy. And
Yeah.
especially when I think, because I remember In God We Trust and thinking, it's getting a bit soft for me, and
Yeah.
not as heavy as, To Hell with the Devil, which is my sort of favorite Striper album. I don't have all the Striper albums at all or anything like that, but that's one I do have, and I enjoy that song, and that album's got some good songs on it. So, just again one of those bands that I know that still worth checking out, and
Mhm.
they still sound good, and they're still putting out the kind of sound that you're kind of hoping bands like that will put out. So yeah, great choice.
Very good, very good. Yeah, so I will have to send you a couple links there, Steve, since you're not too familiar with the modern stuff. I'll hook you up. So,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah.
man. So now we are going to the other side of this conversation or of this question. And Steve, give us your first band of a band that just cannot keep their catalog is getting worse as time goes on, or just
Mhm,
it's just not
mhm.
clicking.
Not as good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not as good. Yeah. So the band I'm going to talk about is, and I think sometimes it's some of the bigger bands sometimes that maybe will fit this category because it's difficult to maintain that momentum, and to also when you get maybe very popular, then you have a lot of other influences and things you've got to deal with, and you're trying to continue to have hit records as opposed to, well, we just put out what we like and what we enjoy, music we enjoy doing. um and if it's successful, it's successful. I think the more successful you get, the more pressure there is to then continue to be successful. And the band I'm going to talk about is Def Leppard. Who were huge, of course, in the 80s, and even into the early 90s. You know, uh, Adrenalize did actually okay. I think it was 3 times platinum or something like that. But
Yeah.
which is for a 1992 release album where they're kind of associated with 80s hard rock or hair metal. That's not too bad. But then again, also Hysteria is like massive. What's that, like diamond sales or something like that?
Yeah.
Same with Pyromania, massive sales on those two. So it is still quite a bit of a drop. Um, they then released Retroactive, which is kind of like a collection of B-sides and or non-album tracks and so forth. It does okay. I don't think there was big expectations with that because that's just sort of leftover type stuff.
Mhm.
The real test, I guess, was with them was going to be when they put Slang out in 1995, I think it is. And this is kind of grunge has been around for a while, but this is when it's actually become apparent that a lot of those 80s hard rock hair metal bands, they've already gone away now. They're on hiatus. We've been talking about that. They've realized the music scene's just not going to work for them at the moment. So, but bands like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi, who released these days, I think in '95 as well, they still can exist and maybe in fact still get some promotion, still get some airplay. How are they going to go? Well, this doesn't go well at all for them. Now it's actually, for me, I think it's an improvement over Adrenalize. So I actually like more songs. I like more songs on this than I did on Adrenalize, which Adrenalize was a big disappointment. Again, I'll promote the show I did with Tim from Tim's Vinyl Confessions, where we ranked the first 5 albums. And for me, the first 5 Bon Jovi albums are good to great. The fifth one for Def Leppard, I don't even have in my collection. I don't particularly like that much at all. But so this one had nothing to lose because I didn't particularly like Adrenalize, and it's got some good songs on it, like the title track actually I quite like, and Work It Out's a good song. Breathe. There's some good songs. There's some songs I don't like so much. People call it the grunge album. I don't hear this and think, well, that's grunge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could call it worse things. I mean, it's to me, it's not really a grunge album. I mean, there's elements of it, but it's not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call
Yeah.
it.
I mean, it's sure, and this is the problem. This is what eventually happens. Is yes, it really doesn't sound like the band that did Pyromania or even Hysteria. Sort of, I think they would like to be that band again, but I think they really struggle in albums after this to get that sound. And whether, I don't know if Mutt Lange, of course, had a lot to do with their success as a songwriter or producer. They didn't really have him after they didn't have him for this album, and they didn't really have him for much of their follow-up albums. I think he might have done a song or two on an album, but for the most part, he's no longer helping them out. So I don't think that has helped. And they've sort of, they've got quite pop at times. They've had some real albums which have been very sort of more pop rock than hard rock. They did a duet with 9 Lives with Tim McGraw. It's like a country kind of guy. I mean,
look like garbage.
Again, like Bon Jovi messing with the country sort of stuff. I mean, look, I'm not, if you're into that sort of music, that's fine. But I'm sort of thinking a band like Def Leppard are not going to become a country band or do duets with country singers, But yeah, so it's not been so great since Slang, and it's a bit of a, I don't know. Steve Clark, of course, passed away just before Adrenalize was released, and maybe he was a big loss as well. The funny thing is they replaced him with Vivian Campbell, who I love the stuff he did with Dio, and Last in Line, this stuff he's doing with them kicks ass, but just when he plays for Def Leppard, they just don't let him cut loose on the guitar at all, really. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I thought the 2015 album, self-titled album, wasn't too bad, actually. It's got some good songs on it. But for the most part, in the most recent album, maybe 1 or 2 good songs. You can check out my channel. I did a review of that album. I have more hope in them than I do for Bon Jovi, and I'll still be hoping that there will be another good album, but they're just, it definitely fits the category of not as good as what it used to be.
Yeah, I'm with you there on that. With their most recent album, though, it was kind of impressive from what I was expecting, But is it a great album? No. But is it listenable? Sure. Yeah. If someone puts it on, I'm not gonna, beat them up. So,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
no, with slang though, I do really enjoy one song off of there. "Turn to Dust," the second track.
Oh yes, yeah, that's
I
good. Yeah.
really that's a great like melody in there.
Mm,
Like I really enjoy that a great chorus. I
mm.
really enjoy that song. But yeah, I mean it is weird because like Def Leppard, they did kind of change their sound even throughout the 80s. Like On Through the Night is way
Oh
different
yeah,
from,
true, true.
Hysteria, and same thing
Mm,
kind of with Adrenalize a little bit. They even went more of a hard rock pop instead of
mm,
because even
mm,
like Hysteria is kind of like its own thing when
mm,
you really like dissect it. But yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think Def Leppard has like one of the best catalogs of ballads for a band.
mm,
And like I will stand by that 100%. I'll die on that hill probably till I die.
mm.
But like it's and they have a big catalog too. So they do have you have plenty of ballads to choose from, but other than Love Bites, I hate that song. But no, like they have a really good catalog of ballads. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah,
Mm,
it's a good that's a good band to put on this
mm,
kind of like going down list here.
mm.
So all right, so for I guess my first one, I will jump into it's gonna be Skid Row. You know, it's interesting because obviously everyone always points the finger with Sebastian Bach is Skid Row, and but then again, you kind of are talking here like with Subhuman Race. Like I know people that really like this album that do like
Mhm,
the first two as well, but I can't get into Subhuman Race. There's like one song on here that I kind of like, and that's Breaking Down, the ballad type feel song. And I mean, it's just like their attempt at Pantera or like
mm,
grungy kind or groove
mm,
metal, not grungy so much, but
mm,
maybe like a groove metal type feel. And then after that, obviously they broke up and they got some different singers in. You had like Thick Skin, you had Revolutions Per Minute. I know a couple people that do enjoy those albums, but there's just nothing on there that is real memorable to me that I heard. I'm like, hey, I gotta buy this. And they also did like a couple EPs here, like Rise of Damnation. I actually had this for like 5 years. I never listened to it yet. So, and that just tells you like there's nothing gravitating me towards this.
mm, mm.
Yeah, but I will say though, the brand or not the brand new, but like the newest album, The Gang's All Here, with Eric Grunwald, from Heat, I believe, originally, was
Mm,
is actually really good. I enjoy it. I know actually a couple people didn't were kind of disappointed in it, but they kind of thought it sounded too generic or so. I was all right with it. I liked it. It's worthy of having in the collection. I'm cool with it. I think Eric sounds good. The band sounds good. But obviously now Eric leaves with like the
mm,
last couple weeks. So I'm kind of I want to ask you a question here, Steve. Now
mm.
that Eric left, is it time for Sebastian Bach to come back or only two choices or Skid Row just hang it up and go do your own thing like as far as uh the musicians in Skid Row just kind of like do your own solo stuff or whatever. Just it's either Sebastian Bach now because like I don't think the fans are just like we don't want to go through another singer. You kind of had it with Eric, because you had like other people that were good singers, but you even had the Dragon Force guy, which I am a big fan of Dragon Force,
Mm,
newer power metal type band,
mm.
and it just didn't work though. But Eric actually kind of worked there with this. The Gang's All Here, and what do you think, Steve? Is it Sebastian Bach or kind of hang it up?
Yeah, well, actually, the funny thing is, I put a little question on my YouTube community post thing,
Oh, okay,
asking
yeah, I
them.
did it. I answered that then. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, 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 and it was basically, I think about 70% said they need to get Sebastian back,
Yeah.
and I think um, uh, the rest were kind of maybe 17% said get a new singer, and then the rest was just like hang it up, So,
Yeah.
and I guess when you like forget about it, quit the band, we'll finish the band, and I guess that you're kind of almost saying that though too if you're voting for Sebastian Bach to come back, because you're saying either he comes back or it's
Yeah.
over. So
Yeah.
there's only basically 17% or something like that saying you could get a new singer, and I think there's not many people saying that because exactly for what you're saying is like they've been through so many singers, and they had I think people were like the get Sebastian Bach back um, uh, requests had really died down when Eric came into the band, because I think a lot of people liked Eric, and I thought, okay, this is actually, and they liked the album, and this is working. So,
Hmm.
but now with him gone, it's I just don't know about getting a new singer again, but maybe they can make it work. For me personally,
Yeah.
I just think get Sebastian back or call it quits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
I'm
but
with
yeah,
you. That's where I'm
yeah,
at too. That's kind of
yeah.
where I'm at.
Or take that band and get a new singer, but then don't call it Skid Row. Let's give it a new fresh start. Start a new new band name. I'd be interested. Definitely, I'll check it
Oh
out.
yeah.
This is one of my favorite Skid Row albums. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
You're not
I
the
like
only one. You're not the only
I
one.
like the debut, but this would be my second favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, really like that one, which is weird because I don't necessarily like the other albums they've done with Johnny Solinger, but
Hmm.
this one really stands out for me for whatever reason. So yeah, just saying. But yeah, I didn't get into even Slave to the Grind where they got heavier. I thought they were just getting heavier for the sake of getting heavier, and I didn't like that album as much as their debut. I mean, it's okay. Monkey Business is a good song. Um, yeah, and their third album's kind of one I felt like I haven't given it enough of a play, to be honest. I play it and I go, and then I'm not enthusiastic about putting it back on,
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I'm with you.
uh, yeah. So I don't feel like I like it, but to be honest, I haven't played it a lot. Yeah, so well, we'll just have to wait and see with them. But I think that's a good choice to say that their albums are not as good as what they used to be. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Yep. All right, Steve. So we got one more yet here. Do you
Yeah.
mind telling us who your second pick is?
Yeah, sure. So now I'll start off with the positives in the sense that I love this band. So the band I'm talking about is House of Lords.
Oh, come down off your throne and leave your body alone. Somebody must change.
And this is their debut album. It's a bit of it's an interesting group because they're on the debut album. They've got Chuck Wright, who you know from Quiet Riot, and Ken Mary. He's been in other bands. It's got this guy Greg Giuffria, who was from the band Giuffria.
Yeah.
Initially, this album actually, all the songs were going to be a Giuffria album, but then they decided to bring in James Christensen, and so that James Christian on vocals, and then they changed the name of the band. Executive producer is Gene Simmons, so this is on the Simmons Records label. And then they put out Sahara and then Demons Down after that. And then, of course, it's 1992. And yeah, again, another one of those deals where the band sort of just goes away for a little bit. Or, I don't know, they probably just said we're splitting up. But then they come back again. And I think it's probably like early 2000s, something like that. And yeah, they come back again. Not same band. So they've still got James Christian on vocals, but they've got other band members. So Ken Mary came in, I think, for one album as well.
Jeffrey is
Who
not
else?
in there, is he?
No, Jeffria's gone. So yes, it's mainly James Christian on who's the vocalist, and he's now pretty much, it's kind of like his band now, really. And I mean, they have done a lot of albums since coming back. Frontiers released on Frontiers,
Yep.
and now again, it's a little bit like some of these other bands that we've talked about, where they go away and they come back, and they don't have the same original members, but they're still using the band name, and they're putting out albums that are relatively, pretty good, sometimes good hard rock albums, but they just don't quite seem to sound like the original band, or have that sort of. Doesn't have to be the same sound, but it just doesn't feel like it's an evolution of sound. It just sounds like this is a whole new band. It's
Okay.
probably because it kind of is. Yes, you might have those very distinctive vocals. You still got the singer, maybe, which is probably the one thing that you possibly have to have
You're right.
to carry on. But it just, for me, it doesn't quite capture those first three House of Lords. I think are really good albums. I do have this one. Cartesian Dreams. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. This
Okay.
one's got some good song. This one's got some good songs on it. It's the only one I've got sort of post 2000. Yeah. But otherwise, there's quite a few albums, and I just find they're okay. But I've left the House of Lords train a while ago, so I just think maybe again one of those deals where perhaps they should have renamed the band name.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm with you on that because like I really like Sahara. I like that album a lot. I might even like it better than the first the debut. But
Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing. Like I know that they're still around because I even looked some of their stuff up on eBay or Frontiers and stuff.
Mm.
And I listened to a couple of the music videos, singles and stuff, and it's just it didn't grab I didn't it wasn't very memorable. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, it's just kind of
Mm.
generic power metal
Mm.
now,
Mm.
or whatever you want to put kind of subgenre that you want to put them in here. But yeah, that's a good one. That's good. That's kind of like one that not many people probably think about either. Because
No, well, it's interesting too that a band like that weren't really they had some success, definitely.
mhm,
But they weren't huge, and yet now they're coming back, and they're still sort of, in a way, I feel like they're trading off the band name. You wouldn't think that necessarily that would have that much value. They're not like Skid Row or Def Leppard or Bon Jovi,
yeah.
That, but I guess that they have their fans, and of course they're on Frontiers, and people on that label, and that label is really known for kind of getting those sort of, not those top tier bands, but those more sort of lower level type bands from the 80s, and sort of repackaging them and
hmm
putting out their albums these days. So yeah, it's good that they've got a home for those type of bands, I guess. But yeah,
The real melodic type stuff, I would say, for
yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Frontiers.
melodic hard rock. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, good deal. But yeah, good choice. I nonetheless big fan of the first three.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. All right, so I guess my last pick here will be none other than Motley Crue.
There is no cure. Well, she's so afraid. She's so afraid of death. She's afraid of life. The drama in her head.
It's just I don't know. You have your diehards there, Steve, with Motley Crue, and
Mhm.
even with the brand new song that just came out, "Dogs of War." I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, but what are we doing here? It's kind of like that. And if I want to get a full album of that, I don't
Mm.
know. I don't know. I don't know, Steve. But we'll
Yeah.
talk about the albums that, or yeah.
It's
Do you have
like
something to say
the
on?
way I think we probably feel about it. It's like, look, it's not like we're not going to listen to it, right? New Motley Crue album, we're going to check it out, right?
Right, right,
But
exactly.
do we want it to be called Motley Crue? Like maybe just let it. I mean, you guys did say it was over like a few years ago. This was the end.
Yeah, do what comes natural. Don't try to force something here, and that's kind of what it is feeling. Well,
Yeah,
that's what a lot of
yeah.
this here feels like. What I'm gonna talk about. Obviously, we have. So I'm gonna start when the hill started going down after John Corabi left, because I'm
Hmm.
a big fan of
Hmm.
1994,
Hmm.
and that's very distinctive. You have your people that hate it, you have your people
Hmm.
that love it. It's not in between. But
Mhm.
so they get the reunion album here with Generation Swine, 1997. Then you move on to New Tattoo, which I actually do enjoy. Out of the modern Motley Crue, I guess you would say post 1997. I would probably visit this one out of all of them. Then you
Mm,
obviously have here, can't really see. It's the Saints of Los Angeles from
mm,
2008,
mm,
which was
mm,
somehow I think I seen on Wikipedia it went gold, and I had no idea how. I mean, obviously you do know why because it's
mm,
Molly Crew's comeback deal. Everyone's
mm,
all
mm,
psyched and everything, and rightfully so. But as an album itself, like musically, there's only a couple songs
mm,
that are memorable,
mm,
and it's
mm.
just like we're kind of talking a little bit on the Kiss type deal here, like what we talked about on
Yeah.
your show or on the first show here. And it's like,
Mm,
you have all this time, as good as you guys were and are, I guess, but you have all this time in between albums and you can't produce something that's natural or just very catchy and good, what you guys are known for. It's like, come on, what are we doing here? Like, you guys they're big enough to be like, we can do what we want and not kind of be forced to sound a certain way. I think they were always kind of big enough to play that game. I don't know. They did attempt that with Saints of Los Angeles to kind of get back to that Motley Crue sound, and even in parts, New Tattoo. I think that was a really good
yeah.
attempt to getting back to Motley Crue sound, and
Mm,
I think it worked a
mm,
lot better than Saints of Los Angeles, and that's even without Tommy Lee
mm,
on. You had Randy Castillo
mm,
on drums for New
mm,
Tattoo, which I think really
mm,
worked. But yeah, Steve, I don't care for it. Like, and that's kind of what led me to say if they come out with something new, sure, we'll listen to it. I'll probably even buy
mm,
it. I don't know, but
mm,
man, if it's gonna be kind of like AI generated feels type stuff. Like, come on, you guys can do way better than that. Even in your guys' age right now, you can do better than
mm,
this. And it's just very disheartening how the catalog, for as a great of a band that everyone says they are, and I have my own thoughts what of their stuff in the '80s compared to other bands of their peers at the time. I
mm,
kind of think it's way overrated I'll just say that for this
mm,
show. But yeah, we're going
mm,
downhill after John Corabi leaves, and
mm.
it's not even close. So I don't know, Steve. Do you have something to say on Motley Crue and the decline?
Yeah, well, I think the comparison with Kiss is quite appropriate because there's like 3 albums post John
Yeah,
Corabi
since
albums.
1997.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, which is the same as Kiss. They've done 3 albums since since
Psycho. 1998, I
yes,
guess, or six.
yeah, basically since the Carnival album, right? So,
Hmm.
yeah, so that's quite a long period of time for not a lot of albums, and I guess they've been focusing more on touring. They're quite a big band, and Motley Crue, quite a popular band.
Hmm.
They can tour and play some big shows. Of course, they have other big, quite popular acts going with them as well, like the Def Leppard, Motley Crue tour
Poison.
was very
Yeah.
yeah, and Poison was big, wasn't it? But yeah, it's yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Just imagine if the 1994 album had been successful, what would have happened? But
Mhm.
yeah, but yeah, I I just, like I said, I think it really, to be honest with you, it just comes down to the fact that what I said before. They said they were finishing. You should have finished, and that should have been it. And they don't even have the original members now, and Mick's left. So I don't think this was the time to start bringing in a new guitar player. It should have just that should have said, okay, now we're going to call it quits.
Yeah.
It's quite late in the game to be changing members. Yeah, I mean, can you do it without Mick? Of course you could, but is it going to sound like Motley Crue? Or is it going to sound like 6 a.m.?
Yeah. And that's
Which I don't
what
mind, but
that's what a lot of
yeah.
people kind of compare Saints of Los Angeles with, like a
Mm,
6 a.m.
mm,
album.
mm. Which is great. I love 6 a.m., but it's not. Don't call it Motley Crue then. Or 6 a.m. I don't
Okay,
know.
yeah. I got you.
Mickey
Yeah,
writes all the music anyway, pretty much. So
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, all right, yeah. So we're kind of in agreement with a lot of our choices here, I think. And yeah, Steve, can you please, if you don't have any final words on your choices, please tell everyone where they can find you at.
Yeah, so yeah, Rock and Metal Invasion's my YouTube channel, and yeah, similar to what we've been doing here on Trevor's channel, just talk about music and albums, and but not always, but big focus on the hard rock metal bands from the '80s. Dare I say it, hair metal, and yeah, so we talk about those, and yeah, if you haven't checked out my channel and you check out Trevor's, yeah, you should probably check mine out. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Trevor. It's always good to have a chat with you, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Same, brother. Thank you again for coming on. And guys, if you like seeing obscure, very out of print vinyl, Steve's your guy. Go check out Rock and
Oh yeah,
Metal Invasion.
yeah.
That's one of the things. Like I specifically gotta go check out. When you bring up a topic, I'm like, this guy has the vinyl, and I need to see it, like Wild Side and such. So yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
damn,
yeah,
okay, yeah, good deal. But thank you again, there, Steve. This is great, and we will have you on again here soon. But guys, that wraps up. Let us know in the comments as well. What are some of your guys' choices? What bands got better and what bands kind of didn't,
Mm.
basically? So I'm sure you guys can think of a couple. This was actually not too hard of a topic, but everyone has their own taste, so it's all good though. This is all fun nonetheless. But guys, that wraps it up. Stay out of that collateral damage. For Rock and Metal Invasion, I'm Trevor Crash Knight. We will see you guys later.
Yeah, I wrote that. It's called I Want to Rock Your Body. And then in parentheses it says to the break of dawn.